this is probably going to be really, really bad. I haven't looked back at these. I've generally forgotten who I put where because I made this so long ago and I'm not like a championship expert. I remember when I made these it was just sort of vibes I was going off really. So this should be pretty funny, pretty fun to look back at because the championship, I mean, it's one of the hardest leagues in the world to predict, so I reckon I've had some absolute stinkers probably in this video which we can all just sit back, relax and laugh about together. So let's watch it back and see how I did. Hopefully it's not too bad. My aim, I'm hoping I get at least one position right. That's my aim, generally, because I think this could be really bad. But yeah, let's see how we do. Let's play the video. I've gone for Oxford United. Oxford United. Damn, it's a good story, you know. Them coming back up to the championship has been a very, very long time. Very, very long time since they were last in the championship. But ultimately, I just think it might be a little bit too much for them. Okay, so, well, we're already off to a pretty bad start. In 24th spot, I predicted Oxford United. They finished in 17th spot. They, in the end, were fairly comfortable in terms of avoiding relegation. Now, to be fair, they were actually at one point looking like they were very likely to go down, but they sacked their manager. They appointed Gary Rowett, who came in towards the end of the season and was absolutely terrific and steered them away from relegation. I completely understand why I predicted them to go down because I actually think they have kind of overachieved in finishing 17th. It's not an awful prediction, but yeah, I was pretty off. 23rd place. 23rd place. I have Plymouth. Argyle.
Yes.
Argyle. Yes.
Now the main reason for this is Wayne Rooney being appointed. I think that's a really, really bad appointment. Yeah, you saw what he did at Birmingham, just absolutely awful with them. One of the main reasons they went down last season, and I would be shocked. I would be absolutely shocked if Wayne Rooney managed to see out the season with Plymouth.
We have actually somehow already got one bang on. Plymouth did indeed finish 23rd in the championship season. So I managed to get one correct. Let's end the video here before I embarrass myself. No, but I was right about Rooney. Not a good manager. I'm pretty sure he was sacked by Christmas. Before then, they did have a bit of a resurgence towards the back end of the season under their new manager, but it was a little bit too late, and in the end they were relegated in 23rd spot. So hey, I've got one right. I'll take that.
22nd place is Blackburn Rovers.
Gosh.
Yeah, I mean, just so much uncertainty around the club behind the scenes. It's just, whenever that happens to a club, they're almost destined for a bad season, and I think that's going to happen with Blackburn. I think they're going to go down. They ended last season pretty poorly, only just survived, but I think this season's going to be the year they do go down.
Right. This is a very, very bad prediction. I said Blackburn would be relegated. In the end, they finished 7th, 2 points off a playoff spot. I was way, way, way off. Now I do understand the logic behind this because, as I said, going into this season, there was big sort of financial turmoil around Blackburn. They couldn't really sign any players. They had only just survived this year before, so I don't think many people were expecting Blackburn to, fight for a playoff spot. But yeah, they did very well. Had a new manager coming, and he was fantastic towards the end of the season. So I was horribly, horribly wrong there with Blackburn. That was a very bad shout.
So, just surviving in 25th 21st. 21st. I have Derby County. Now Derby County, I was actually very close in putting them down.
Alright.
Because I think I'm a little bit unconvinced by their squad. I think their squad is just about championship level, maybe just about. But the reason I have managed to keep them up is because for me, I think they have more quality than Oxford. And I think there's going to be much less turmoil around the club than Blackburn, of course.
Right, so I had Derby County in 21st staying up, which I was technically wrong, but I was only 2 places off. They finished in 19th spot, and they did indeed stay up. They were in the mix of going down. What I said about them having more quality than Oxford and less turmoil than Blackburn was wrong, but I was right. Derby just about have a championship level squad and just about managed to stay up. It was very close, but they did stay up. So even though I didn't get it bang on, I'm pretty pleased with that. I predicted Derby to stay up.
We have Portsmouth.
Okay.
Portsmouth down. Now Portsmouth was an interesting one because I didn't know whether I should put them. I could easily see them having some Ipswich-esque season, maybe not that good, but fighting for playoffs or something. But equally, I could see them just absolutely tanking and getting relegated straight back down again. But in between, and them being in and around that relegation battle, but surviving.
Okay. So I said Portsmouth would finish in 20th spot. They managed to finish 16th. They were in and around the relegation areas, but a little bit more comfortable than I first anticipated. Yeah, in the end, they finished 16th and were fairly comfortable, but hey, I had them staying up, so I'll take it.
19th. Preston North End. Now Preston, I was actually debating putting lower because I was really not convinced by them last season. Last season they were quite lucky in my opinion to stay up. They had some really good early season form, but then they really dipped off towards the second half of the season. It was really, really bad. And especially when you look at their defence was really, really poor. Really, really bad. One of the worst defences last season in the league.
Right, this was a pretty good prediction. I had Preston finishing in 19th. I was 1 place off. I was so close. They eventually finished in 20th spot, and I was right to doubt Preston because, well, Ryan Lowe, just 3 games into the season, actually left Preston, and Paul Heckingbottom came in. Initially did pretty well, but they ended the season really poorly, and just about by the skin of their teeth survived in 20th spot. So a pretty good prediction. I'll definitely take that for sure, because I'm not sure a lot of people actually had Preston down here.
18th place, I have Millwall. Now, I thought Millwall had a fantastic bounce last season. Ended the season really well under Neil Harris, basically a football legend at Millwall. Knows the club like the back of his hand. Always does a really good job there and did really well keeping them up last season and had some really good form in the back end. However, he knows how to consolidate, but I don't think he can really do much more than that.
Right, another stinger here. I had Millwall in 18th spot, 10 places away from where they actually finished in 8th spot. Similar to Blackburn, they only just narrowly missed out on playoffs, 2 points away from that. Now, I was technically right about Neil Harris because he's not actually the guy in charge. Alex Neil has come in and he has done fantastic stuff with Millwall to take them to a position where they're fighting for the playoffs. So I was horribly wrong with this one. Not great.
Okay, the final team in the just survived column is Watford. Watford. Yeah, Watford for me, season is not looking too good to be honest. Last season was pretty poor for them. Brian Don Cleverley was back in the season on an interim deal. Now he actually did pretty decent. He actually did okay for them, but the problem is that their squad is pretty weak now. They lost Ismail Kone to Marseille. He Yasser Asprilla, apparently he could leave as well. I look at that squad, I'm like, okay, it's not really amazing. You have an inexperienced manager in Dom Cleverley, who, this is his first full season in management. Was it just like a new manager bounce thing last season? We'll wait and see on that.
Right, so I had Watford in 17th, now wasn't too far off here. I was 3 places off, they were in 14th spot. Comfortably a mid-table team this season. It wasn't a fantastic year for Watford. A lot of the stuff I said about, their squad not quite really being good enough, Cleverley being an experienced manager, has happened. Surprisingly, Cleverley has actually stayed the entire season as Watford manager. That might be like a record, but yeah, they were in and around the area I mentioned, so not bad there.
Okay, in 16th place in the lower mid-table part. Lower mid-table is Hull City. Hull City. Now this might seem a little bit surprising given Hull were almost getting the playoffs last season, but this is a very, very different Hull team, and I do worry for them this season. They sacked Liam Rosenior, which was a really, really weird decision in my opinion. I think he's a really good coach. He did really well for Hull. They're gone for someone who plays more attractive, progressive football. This guy might do well, but I just think that's, such a big risk.
Wow. So I predicted Hull to finish 16th. I was quite a bit off. They were a lot worse than I actually anticipated. They finished in 21st, but a lot of what I said was right. I said sacking Liam Rosenior was a really weird and bad decision, and I said he was a good coach, and he's actually gone to Strasbourg and has done fantastic stuff there. They've brought in this new guy who's going to try and play expansive football, but it didn't work out. He left, Ruben Zeles came in, and he just about kept Hull City up by the skin of their teeth on the final day. So they finished 21st. I said 16th. I was a little bit optimistic for Hull, but a lot of what I said about them struggling this season did happen, so I'll take that.
15th place. 15th place Swansea. Swansea City. Yeah, I think they're definitely going to be in this mid-table section for me. Swansea, I look at the squad, it's okay. Couple of good players in there like Matt Grimes and stuff, but there's no like outstanding players in there. The manager did okay last season in the back end of it, stabilised the team. I think this is more just going to be a sort of real rebuilding onto him.
Okay, I was a little bit off here. I said 15th for Swansea. They were a little bit better than I anticipated in 11th, although that was sort of like late season form from them. For most of the season, they were actually a little bit worse than I thought. They were in and around this sort of relegation area, but then sacked their manager, and the new manager did pretty well to stabilise them, and they ended the season really well, pushing them into 11th, but I was sort of right around them in that mid-table area.
14th, Cardiff City. Cardiff City. Now, Cardiff actually ended last season really, really well. Some people might actually push them up a little bit than this, but for me, I thought they ended last season well. Manager's good. I think they are definitely progressing. I just look at the squad and I think squad is decent, but I'm not convinced they have enough quality in that squad to really make a dent in the playoff contenders.
Wow, this is definitely one of the worst predictions so far. I was 10 places off here. I was actually saying Cardiff. I was actually saying Cardiff would be, maybe could be making a push for playoffs. They finished dead last in 24th spot. Absolutely horrific season from Cardiff. Although to be fair, I'm not sure a load of people at Cardiff finishing bottom of the table. It was a little bit of a surprise. Just how poor they were this season, but what a bad prediction that was. Wow.
13th, Stoke City. Stoke City, yeah. Again, it's very similar. Cardiff and Swansea. I think these three teams are very, very similar. Again, just a decent squad. They do have a little bit more quality, I would say, than Swansea and Cardiff in that squad. A couple good players. Like a goalkeeper they've signed, Wouterberger as well. But overall, I don't think the quality in that squad is enough.
Right, a little bit optimistic on Stoke there. I said they would finish in 13th spot, was gone quite quickly into the season. Mark Robbins came in and has actually done pretty decent for them and steered them away from the relegation spots, but overall a pretty poor campaign from Stoke, and I was a little bit off with that prediction.
Rounding off the mid-table in 12th place is Bristol City. Literally, I could talk about all these four the same way. All four of these teams, just Bristol City, same thing. Decent squad, couple good players in there, you know, Sinclair Armstrong coming in, decent player. But, you know, manager, decent. Liam Manning did pretty well at the back end of last season. However, overall, again, just like these three, I think they lack that quality, they lack that star power to really make a push for those playoffs and really make a dent.
Okay, I was quite far off again here. I said Bristol City would finish mid-table. I didn't think they had enough quality to push into the playoff spots. I said they'll finish 12th. They did, in fact, of course, make the playoffs, finishing in 6th spot. What a fantastic season from them. But yeah, I was quite far off here with this prediction. I should also caveat this by saying I'm filming this before the playoffs, so Bristol City might even get promoted, which would be an unreal season from them. But yeah, I was a little bit off here. I definitely underestimated Bristol City for sure.
So in 11th place I have QPR. QPR now, QPR are very similar to these guys, to be honest. Decent squad. You know, they have compared to these, but I do think they have some players in there who, if they can really perform well this season, have the capabilities to really help QPR.
Again, I was quite a bit off here. I said QPR would finish in 11th. They did finish 15th. They were sort of mid-table-ish, sort of floating around the lower half of the table. It wasn't an amazing season from them. It was pretty average. I think a lot of people actually expected QPR to really kick on this season because he ended the previous season on some fantastic form, but it just didn't happen, and it was a pretty underwhelming season from QPR, really.
10th place. Now this could be a little bit of a controversial pick. I've gone Sheffield United. Sheffield United in 10th place. Yeah, recently relegated. This one could bite me. This one really could bite me. Sheffield might well just go playoffs or just go straight back up, and I might really live to regret this. But the way I look at this team is, I think they're going to struggle a little bit this season. I think there will be a hangover from last year. Mentally, how bad they were is going to take a big psychological blow to this Sheffield United team, in my opinion.
Right, an absolute howler here. I said it was probably going to bite me in the back, and it did indeed. I don't know what I was thinking here. I put them in 10th spot. They, of course, finished in 3rd with 90 points and were very close in getting automatic promotion and are, you know, potentially going up through the playoffs. Yeah, I was quite wrong here. I understand why I would think this. I think a lot of people did also think this about Sheffield United, that they might potentially struggle given just how poor they were in the Premier League this season before. But credit to Wilder, because there was no hangover, that he got over that sort of psychological thing which I mentioned could happen. And yeah, they were very good in this championship season, and unfortunate not to get promoted through the automatic promotion spots. But a really bad prediction there.
And just above them in 9th, oh god, the Sheffield United fans gonna hate me for this one. Sheffield Wednesday, just above them in one place higher. Yeah, I think Sheffield Wednesday are gonna finish above Sheffield United. Yeah, I think Sheffield Wednesday actually have quite a bit of hope and optimism going into this season. Their manager Danny Rowe was absolutely superb. He is one of the best coaches, in my opinion, in the league. He was so good last season for Sheffield Wednesday, save them from relegation and put in some incredible work for them.
Wow, I had Sheffield Wednesday finishing above Sheffield United, which of course did not happen. Now Sheffield Wednesday did in fact finish 12th, so I wasn't like too far off here. They were were sort of in and around that playoff area, sort of flirting to compete, but really they just lacked quality. They were quite poor in the back end of the season, particularly their away form was very poor. Sheffield Wednesday, I still do think Danny Rowe is a pretty good coach, but yeah, Sheffield Wednesday, I know a lot of people actually had them sort of their dark horses and put them in like playoff contention as well, so I was a little bit more cautious with them. I had them in the sort of right area, but a little bit higher than they were in reality.
Okay, 8th place. 8th place, I have Norwich City. Yeah, look, this one is very, very dependent on the transfer window and what happens in the coming weeks, because Norwich have quite a few players who could potentially leave. Gabriel Sara, as of recording, has not left, but has been heavily linked with moves away, and I think will probably leave. Johnny Rowe, again, has been linked with moves away, but is still there. So, you know, if they lose Sara, if they lose Rowe as well, then I think maybe Norwich could slip down a little bit more.
Well, they did indeed lose Gabriel Sara. They did indeed lose Jonathan Rowe. So I was kind of right here. If they had kept those two, they probably would have finished in 8th spot. But as I said, they lost those two and they did drop off. They eventually finished 13th. It was not a good year for Norwich, eventually sacking their manager. Actually, Jack Wilshere ended the season for them, which is pretty cool. But yeah, it was not a good year at all for Norwich. I had them probably a bit higher than maybe anticipated, but to be fair, I had the caveat there in the Villa context, so give me a little bit of slack for that, because I sort of just made this prediction assuming Zara and Rao would stay. So
right then, 7th place, just missing out on the playoffs. It's a little bit of a controversial one. I've gone Burnley. Yeah, personally, I'm just not convinced by Scott Parker as manager. I think it's a really odd appointment by Burnley.
Oh man, it was going so well. Or like, you know, I had a couple stinkers here and there, but then, oh gosh, no, this video, it started off okay, you know, I think this section was pretty good. We're getting progressively worse and worse here. First for Sheffield United taken, now Burnley had them missing out on playoffs, and they ended the season on 100 points, only missing out on the league title by goal difference. I said I was not convinced by Scott Parker. Scott Parker led them to 100 points and has taken them to promotion as one of the best defensive teams in Championship history. Yeah, not good. Not good at all.
In sixth spot, making the playoffs just about, is Sunderland. Yeah, this one could come back to bite me. The way I see it is there's always one team who makes the playoffs or gets promoted who people don't really expect too much of from the start of the season, and I think Sunderland could be that one.
Okay. We've salvaged a bit of credibility here. I got Sunderland in the playoffs in 6th spot. They finished in 4th spot, a little bit better actually than I thought. But they did make the playoffs, so I'm taking that as a win there. And actually, the way I'm speaking about it, people, you know, weren't particularly rating Sunderland too highly, or, you know, Sunderland weren't one of the favourites to make the playoffs at the start of the season. So I'm actually very pleased about that prediction, getting them into the playoffs. So yeah, I've salvaged a bit of credibility here with that Sunderland prediction. But yeah, overall this still isn't going too well.
A 5th spot, Coventry 5th. Yeah, Coventry much more likely to get into the playoffs than Sunderland, and I think they definitely will get in there. Have a really talented squad, some really good another year under Mark Robbins. They were a bit unlucky last season with a couple injuries and stuff, but I think they're a much settled squad now this year.
Right, this is pretty funny because the way I was talking, I thought Sunderland would be like the wild shout to get playoffs, and Coventry are just sort of like set in stone. We're easily, definitely going to get at least playoffs. Now, I was actually right. Coventry did finish 5th spot, so I got another. This is my second correct spot. They did finish 5th in the playoffs, but it was in a completely different manner than I expected. I thought Mark Robbins would still be the manager, he would take them there. I did not expect Mark Robbins to be sacked and them have such a bad season early on, and I did certainly not expect Frank Lampard to be the man to deliver them to the playoffs. So yeah, a late season surge by Lampard and Coventry got them into the playoffs. But hey, I'm taking that right now. I've actually got 2 out of the 4 teams in the playoff correct, and I've got Coventry in a correct position, so I'm actually doing pretty well in terms of this playoff spot predictions right now. Although, looking at the rest of the teams in this tier list, I don't think this is going to go particularly well.
I have Luton down. Luton down. Yeah, Luton, I think are definitely going to make playoffs minimum for me. Playoffs minimum for Luton. Rob Edwards, really good manager. We saw last season Luton were really competitive in the Premier League when many people didn't actually expect them to. Personally, I think out of the 3 promoted sides, Sheffield, Burnley, Luton, I think I have the most confidence in Luton.
Oh my word.
Like if I had to put my money on somebody to go back up, I would say Luton. As I said, I have doubts over Parker. I have doubts over, the squad for Sheffield. For Luton, out of those squad teams, much more settled.
Just stop it. Just stop the talking. Right, this is hands down maybe my worst ever prediction on this channel. I had Luton down in 4th spot. They got relegated. They finished 23rd. Wow. Now, in fairness, I don't think anybody actually predicted Luton to get relegated. I think most people had Luton in and around the playoff spots. And hey, it could have gone a lot worse. I could have predicted them to win the league, right? But I mean, some of the stuff I was saying just completely turned out to be false. I said I think out of the promoted sides they would have the best chance of going up. Well, they got relegated. I said Edwards is a great coach and they have a settled team under him. Well, Rob Edwards was sacked as manager. Yeah, absolutely abysmal. Absolutely abysmal prediction there. But as I said, I understand completely why I would think this, and I don't think many people predicted Luton to be just as bad as they did and suffer back-to-back relegations. There was no way I was ever going to predict that right, but 4th spot, oh gosh, above Burnley and Sheffield, yeah, horrible, stinking prediction.
West Brom, I have them just missing out in 3rd place. Agonisingly close. I think it will be close for them, but I just think that they'll miss out. I really like this West Brom team. Manager, arguably the best manager in this league, Carlos Corberán, is a top quality manager. Been at the Baggies for a year and a half now. Settled in nicely. Got to playoffs last year. I think they'll build upon that and really push on for those automatic promotion spots.
Okay, so another pretty bad prediction here, but I think we need to apply a little bit of context here. So West Brom, I predicted would finish 3rd, just missing out on automatic promotion. They were really nowhere near that in the end. They finished 9th, and ended the season on pretty bad form. But there is context to be applied because I, of course, was predicting this with Carlos Corberán in charge. I said he was one of the best coaches in the Championship, and he had a settled squad and good thing under him. And they did. When he started the season off, they were in the race for promotion. They were in those playoff spots and did pretty well under him. However, he jumped ship for Valencia midway through the season, and West Brom completely collapsed. New manager came in, didn't have the same success, they sacked him, and yeah, they just completely collapsed after Corberán left. So there is context to be applied there. I do think they probably wouldn't have finished third, but they might have probably got playoffs if Carlos Corberán was still manager there. But yeah, I guess it was a pretty bad prediction in the end, predicting them to finish third.
Middlesbrough and Leeds, out of these two, who do I have as my championship title winners? I have both of them going up this season. But I have Middlesbrough in automatic promotion, and I have Leeds as my championship champions. Now Middlesbrough going up in automatic promotion. I think if they can keep everybody fit this season, I think they are minimum making playoffs, and I think they're going to get automatic promotion. You know, last season they were destroyed with injuries, and they were still almost making the playoffs. Of Leeds last season, if it was any other season, would have gone up. They got like 90 plus points. So unlucky not to go up. I think they're going to build upon it under Daniel Fark, as long as, you know, there's not this sort of disappointment hangover from last season and not making them, you know, the way they sort of collapsed at the end of the season, then they'll be fine.
Okay, so I'm glad about this. I did predict Leeds United to be champions, which of course was correct. Now Middlesbrough in second was quite a bad prediction. They ended up finishing in 10th, but you know what? They were sort of in and around those playoff spots for a large portion of the season, and then they sort of just in the second half of the season completely collapsed, and ended the season really poorly. But yeah, I mean, overall I think it was a pretty disappointing season for Middlesbrough. I think a lot of people, like me, expected them to at least make the playoffs, and they didn't do so, so it was a pretty poor prediction for that. But, I did predict Leeds to win the championship. I said they had the best squad. I said they had a settled team with Daniel Farker, and that's exactly what they did. They won the league with 100 points. So I will take that. That is another correct spot. So in the end, I had Leeds in a correct spot. I had Coventry in a correct spot, and I had Plymouth in a correct spot. So I had 3 teams in a correct spot, which is better than I hoped for. I had 2 out of the 4 teams making the playoffs correct in Sunderland and Coventry, which I'll take. I got the champions correct. I predicted 1 of the 3 to get relegated, which they did. And, you know, with certain teams like Derby, Preston, I sort of had them in like the right area-ish. So obviously I had some absolute stinkers with Luton, Burnley, Sheffield United, Cardiff. But overall, you know what? It could have gone worse. It could have gone worse for me. But yeah, let me know how you think I did in the comments below. And if you guys have enjoyed this video, please do leave a like.